What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and there's quite a few things to go over when it comes to places like Disney, as well as Games Workshop, who owns the Warhammer 40K brand, proving that their approach to bringing their universe to live action might actually give anti-nonsense fans something to look forward to. And when you compare how Warhammer is being treated against the other things I have here in this video, it's a stark contrast to say the least. To begin, I want to look at this now deleted scene from Disney's massive failure, The Marvels. This clip was shared via IGN first, but I came across it originally through Nerdrotic's Twitter account, so shout out to him. Anyway, to set the stage here a little, this clip shows Miss Marvel standing inside of Captain Marvel's ship. And then Valkyrie calls, and Miss Marvel, who's the only person present because of the whole body swap thing, answers it. And Valkyrie ends up insinuating something that's really creepy, so let's watch that clip now.
Incoming call from New Asgard.
Hello? Oh, Captain, my captain.
You're Valkyrie!
'Tis I. Wait, Mrs. Marvel. She got married again, and no invite again.
No! I'm Ms. Marvel. We're not.
Okay.
5 seconds to the jump
Oh,
point.
you might want to strap on. Strap in.
Huh?
And as you can see, Valkyrie assumes that Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel are married simply because they both share the same name. Valkyrie also doesn't seem to find it weird that Captain Marvel, who is around 40 to 50 years old but doesn't age because of her nonsense powers, is somehow married to Kamala Khan, who, by the way, is 16 years old in the MCU, so Disney, in their infinite wisdom, attempted to normalize and push a funny joke insinuating that Captain Marvel had a child bride. But I don't know if you caught what Valkyrie said very quickly there, so let's listen to it but slow down.
Okay.
5 seconds to the jump point.
Oh, you might want to strap on. Strap in.
You heard that right. Valkyrie, while staring at a 16-year-old Kamala Khan, tells her when the ship experiences turbulence to not strap in, but to strap on instead. Of course, this is also meant as a joke. But let's just say in terms of lesbian relationships, they do enjoy things of various shapes and refer to these things as strap-ons. But again, it's very creepy and weird to hear Valkyrie staring directly at Miss Marvel, who again is 16 in the MCU, and her mind goes to strap-on immediately. This entire scene was rightfully deleted, and to be frank, it shouldn't have ever even been released to begin with. The entire scene is radiating with what I can only describe as the mask falling off of Hollywood. And with a very public case right now involving an island where people's names are attached to doing things that had kids on it, this doesn't look good at all. In one scene, Marvel manages to assume that Captain Marvel has a child bride in the form of Kamala Khan, and then doubles down assuming that Captain Marvel uses strap-ons on her barely legal jailbait. And it's even extra tone-deaf and weird considering that Miss Marvel's religious identity is Muslim too. This entire scene feels completely gross and very weird, but also very on brand for Disney Marvel today. These weirdos are trying to normalize child-adult relations now in very public and expensive pieces of media. Not to mention the Marvels can and was produced to be seen by children mostly as well. Thankfully, the film flopped insanely bad, but the fact still remains that Kevin Feige and his team of weirdos over there genuinely thought this was good enough to spend their budget on creating. And that's not only worrying, but incredibly gross. We need less degenerate nonsense in our media, and instead we need to return to a semblance of common sense and mutual respect amidst not only the fans and studios, but the stories that we're telling as well. But according to one journalist, studios are so out of touch they think that this is what we want. From fandomwire.com, we have this article titled, "New York Times writer drops bombshell. Hollywood believes that superhero movies are not woke enough." Yeah, you heard that right. These studios think the levels of woke we're at currently are actually not good enough and they need to be increased. This New York Times writer's name is Priyanka Mattu, who casually tweeted this on Twitter. "I regret to inform you that I've now had multiple conversations with studio executives who still don't believe in superhero fatigue. They legit think the problem is that their IP isn't universal enough. As predicted, they think Barbie was about the doll." She then continues her statement further by saying, "Why would anyone listen to what the audience wants?" And ending with, "I haven't been here in a while, but screaming into a void seems appropriate." What Priyanka is saying here is that even amidst the box office failures of the past few years, it's clear that the people in charge of things don't see things as negatively as we all do, and instead believe that concepts like the message or diversity can and will ultimately be accepted by the general populace no matter what. Instead of course correcting and fixing what doesn't work, which, let's be real, is pretty much the entire landscape of blockbuster filmmaking as it is right now, the people in charge are instead believing the solution to their woes is to double or triple down in the face of mass public rejection. Of course, Priyanka doesn't name which executives or studios she talked to. However, since she mentions superheroes and says that the executives she talked to thought Barbie was about the doll, that makes me believe that she was not speaking to Warner Bros. Executives at least, since they of course produced and financed Barbie and allowed Greta Gerwig to make Barbie into the blockbuster hit that it was. So really, who she could be talking about would come down to maybe two camps. It's either Netflix, or more likely of course she was talking to someone at Disney. I doubt she was referring to Amazon Prime, since largely speaking when it comes to superhero content anyway, Amazon has actually been pretty good in that area. Stuff like The Boys and Invincible have been shitting all over Disney and eating their lunch for years now, so she must have spoken to Disney executives. And this worries me, but it doesn't surprise me all that much either, since recently I did review Echo, and I called it the worst thing Disney Marvel has created yet. But on the surface, if you looked at it, Echo is everything Disney Marvel wants their brand to be. They checked so many boxes with that show, from a deaf female main character who's also missing a leg, so they can even check off the disabled box on their diversity checklist with that one as well, and it's very clear that the show is largely being rejected. Also from FandomWire.com, they have another article reporting that Marvel's Echo is the second worst reviewed Disney MCU TV show so far, and the audience score keeps falling with every passing day, and in my opinion, for good reason. Of course, this hasn't stopped the usual weirdos from crawling out of their caves to defend the latest slopfest for their corporate masters. Take Will Landman, for example, who said this about Echo on Twitter. Loved it. Alakwa Fox is just incredible as Maya Lopez, and the series shows just how needed indigenous heroes are in the MCU. The sound design, respect to the Chakwa, fight choreography, it's sick. And then he unironically uses the scene from Echo where she hand signs to say that the world needs a queen pin to take over where the kingpin sits. I wish I was kidding. Also, very weird to say that Echo is great representation for indigenous people, since Echo isn't even a hero in the show. This woman is a murderer and kills people without remorse. She also doesn't save anyone, and if anything, her actions are what bring crime to her town in Alabama in the first place. Not to mention, she endangers many innocent people and brings the kingpin of all people to her town. There is nothing righteous or positive about Echo whatsoever. I can't believe people like Will Landman have shilled so hard they don't realize that they are saying a criminal who kills, steals, and causes property damage is the kind of Native American representation that we need right now. If anything, what Will advocates for is actually kind of racist of him, and proves yet again that these media types, alongside the executives who greenlight these sort of projects, are completely out of touch and don't realize what they're even saying anymore. Praising Echo as good indigenous representation would be like watching a suicide bomber blow themselves up, and then these media types going, yes, that's some positive Middle Eastern representation right there. Like, you can't be serious, guys, come on. Nobody looks at something like The Punisher and thinks to themselves that he's positive representation. He's an anti-hero. He's meant to be viewed as a cautionary tale, but that's what makes him interesting. That's how Echo should be viewed as well. She's a monster that was created by another equally horrible monster. There's nothing positive about her. These people's asses are on backwards and they are shitting all over the place, dude. They're insane. And it just proves to me anyway that these morons really do only see color and gender when they look at someone. They take one look at a murdering psychopath like Echo and they conveniently ignore all of that and just see boxes being checked instead. Oh, she endangers innocent people and causes citizens to get killed? Yeah, but have you seen how she's missing a leg, is also deaf and native? Like, are you kidding me? The ESG is off the charts with this one. The only way Marvel could out-pander this move is to have Ghost Rider be swapped to a fat black woman in a wheelchair, with flaming red hair blasting Martin Luther King's speech while eating fried grasshoppers and drinking soy milk constantly. But I should probably shut up and not give Disney any more ideas, because these days they've proven that this idea is actually possible. I mean, I can't forget about the spider person who webs their wheelchair to their back as they fight crime. We're truly living in a magical time of nonsense. Thankfully, some people out there at least have some sense left in their head, like over at Games Workshop, the owners of Warhammer 40K. They've been teasing how they will bring their universe to live action. According to reports, Games Workshop is doing really well for the most part, although they have stated that their video game sales in 2023 were not the best. But in every other aspect, the Warhammer brand is doing very well, and they're confident that it will continue to increase. When asked how and why it took so long for Warhammer to decide it was time to become a live-action universe in the first place, CEO Kevin Roundtree had this to say, and I quote, "We own what we believe is some of the best underexploited intellectual property globally. In that period reported, we have continued to patiently seek partners that can help us fulfill this potential. We will continue to grant licenses to carefully chosen partners that respect the need for us to have complete ownership of our unique IP. To ensure no harm is done to the core business, a key risk we highlight every year." End quote. What's really interesting is how starkly different Games Workshop treats their Warhammer brand compared to other companies. For example, Marvel was sold to Disney not because they knew Disney would respect the source material, but simply because they outbidded every other offer and then won. This doesn't mean anything in terms of quality, as we can see now with how poorly Disney is doing with Marvel. However, it's very interesting and refreshing to see a company like Workshop that is hell-bent on ensuring that whoever they allow the license to doesn't diminish or ruin their IP. Because, as I'm sure you know, the release of subpar products and experiences can and will dilute and ruin the profitability of a franchise over time. Look at Star Wars and how the mistreatment of that universe has led to global apathy across the board. Warhammer could very easily fall into that same apathetic mindset if the live-action side of its business ends up replicating what something like Star Wars has done already, or even Lord of the Rings too with stuff like Rings of Power. Which is why I'm still concerned out of any studio Workshop could go with, they chose Amazon. Since again, they have made slop in the past like Rings or Wheel of Time. However, they have also made major hits based on IP too, with stuff like Reacher, Invincible, and The Boys to name a few as well. The only true comparison I can see between Warhammer and something else would be like Nintendo with their IP. They are hell-bent on ensuring that when their brand is used, it's for quality. Take the Super Mario movie for example. And it is in Warhammer's best interest to avoid the pitfalls things like Marvel and Star Wars have fallen into. The last thing we need is Warhammer to have a character tell a 16-year-old girl in their movie to strap on, for example. Small, almost blink and you'll miss it moments like this can and will lead to apathy and rejection if the morals of the company in power do not align with their demographics that they're targeting. This is why I've said in 2 previous videos already that Warhammer has the potential to become the next big thing. The franchise that can, if done properly, could become the next Game of Thrones or MCU, as long as the things being made are authentic, respectful, and don't involve identity politics in any form. And this is why it's great to see places like Games Workshop so publicly stating that they are in no rush to make anything live action, unless its quality and authenticity is true to the brand. And they even say the agreement will only proceed once the creative guidelines are mutually agreed between Games Workshop and Amazon. Comparing how Workshop treats Warhammer to many other franchises today is like night and day. And it's very nice to see. While their judgment isn't always perfect, as I would criticize Game Workshop in saying that a majority of their licensed video games don't really accurately represent the quality of their franchise, but man, would it be amazing for Warhammer to have their own Baldur's Gate 3-like video game one day in terms of quality. That would be crazy to see. And another thing that feels very authentic is that Games Workshop, as in the actual people in charge of the franchise, not their subsidiaries, rarely if ever hire anyone new. John Blanche, for example, has just recently left Games Workshop after over 40 years of service. His art style is the reason why you probably find the franchise so eye-catching to begin with. He's retiring, by the way. He's not leaving because of disagreements. The dude has worked enough. He deserves to relax, but this is what I'm saying. This is a company that is bathed in the morality of old school designs. They are more so like the Disney we knew in the 90s compared to what we all have now, is what I'm saying. And I think more than ever, as you can tell, we are in desperate need of content and franchises that reject basically all notions of modern day nonsense. I genuinely don't believe there is any other franchise that is more perfectly positioned to take over Hollywood, gaming, and media in general like Warhammer is right now. In an era where the largest studios like Disney push nonsense like child brides and gender stuff and representation over quality, now is the time for authenticity and respect to reign supreme. If anyone can do it, it's Warhammer. Otherwise, they could end up like Disney, who, for example, is currently set to lay off around 20% of Pixar in 2024. Which is unfortunate, but it's not that surprising, considering Pixar has been making nothing but flops for years now, and further proves what I mean when I say that audiences are just sick of all this kind of stuff. And I doubt Pixar, Marvel, or Star Wars will fix any of these problems going forward anyway. And instead, like that reporter Priyanka said, these executives in charge are just so out of touch with what audiences want, that the likelihood they double or quadruple down in the future is becoming the new normal with every passing release. If we look at the things fans have loved and supported just in the past year at most, it's like I said, things that are quality and respectful to their roots. Take Baldur's Gate 3 for example, or movies like Godzilla Minus One, and other flicks like John Wick Chapter 4 and television shows like The Bear. There is a massive appetite for amazing quality-driven forms of content, and the reality is that this demand is not being met even remotely in today's world. There's a lot of quantity, but unfortunately, when the people in charge think that things aren't woke enough, instead of just fixing things, this is how these situations continue to keep getting worse. Disney is clearly dying, and 2024 doesn't seem to be any different for them than 2023 was. And I wager we'll be seeing even more budget cuts and jobs lost this year too. And like always, it angers me that the people who pay the price are almost never the ones in charge of creative decisions themselves. But instead, it's the workers who lose while the executives who make these moronic decisions that end up staying employed. And if all the stories I've covered so far this year alone has proven anything, it's that 2024 could be even more woke and stupid than even 2023 was. But I hope at least places like Game Workshop are smart enough to not fall into that obvious pit like so many others have already. It's gone beyond go woke, go broke, and evolved into a Frankensteinian version where the rot is just killing these companies from the inside out every day. Yet they're too proud to admit defeat, but can places like Disney take another year of losses like they did in 2023? I guess time will tell, but as always, let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoyed it, and thanks to my patrons for their undying support. Warhammer could change everything, but it's clear Disney has no interest in changing their ways. So I guess time will tell, but until then, have a wonderful day, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.